Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Because of the incompetence of this Prime Minister and Liberal City Hall in Toronto, rent there has more than doubled over the last 9 years. What's worse is that the Prime Minister's so-called Housing Accelerator Fund has given $500 million to Toronto, and only months later, the politicians in that city hiked up home building taxes by 20%. Wow. Now 30% of all home building costs is government taxes alone. Why does the Prime Minister keep sending our money to build bureaucracies that block homes?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we see the Conservative leader's hypocrisy on full display. Let's talk about their housing proposal, which the Conservative leader has been delaying debate on for months because he knows it's not ambitious enough. His proposal won't build homes fast enough, doesn't reach enough cities, and creates unnecessary bureaucracy. The Conservative leader would also rip up the 179 housing accelerator agreements and put the GST back on apartment construction. His clear lack of ambition on housing is partly how we ended up here in the first place.
Hear, hear.
That's right. Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
When I was housing minister, we built 200,000 homes in 1 year. The rent was only $900 and mortgage payments were half of what they are today. Fast forward to present, the Prime Minister wants to has given $500 million to Toronto City Hall to jack up new taxes on home building. No wonder that when the president of the Residential Construction Council of Ontario, Richard Lyle, was asked whether the Prime Minister would keep his promise for 3.9 million new homes by the end of the decade, he said, and I quote, "No chance." Mr. Speaker, why doesn't he stop funding bureaucracy so that we can get out of the way and build homes?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
It is shameful, again, that the Conservative leader continues to exploit the very real anxieties of Canadians. When the Conservative leader was housing minister, let's talk about his record. He withdrew the government from cooperative housing. He supported the construction of 0 new apartments, and he gutted affordable housing initiatives and created new bureaucracies. His housing proposal today continues to fall short. The Conservative leader is simply all slogans and no answers.
That's right. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
My common sense plan to build the homes would reward municipalities that speed up permits and punish the politicians that get in the way. His approach has not only doubled housing costs, but he's built up Toronto City Hall with monstrous financial transfers so that they can block construction. Mr. Speaker, there have been 50 new tent encampments added in the City of Toronto in 6 weeks. Wow. There are 250 tent cities in Toronto alone. Is that his plan to block homes and put up tents?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the so-called plan that the Conservative leader has put forward on housing does absolutely nothing to address homelessness or encampments. What we're actually investing in is hundreds of millions of dollars to help municipalities across the country build more housing rapidly, create the wraparound supports necessary to support people facing homelessness, and continue to be there on the most ambitious and comprehensive housing plan that this country has ever seen. This is part of what we're having to make up for the lost years in which he was housing minister 10 years ago, not creating housing for Canadians, not investing in our future.
Plans. Thornhill.
After 9 years of this Liberal NDP government, their catch and release policies have gotten so bad that they are allowing criminal organizations to operate freely in the streets. Even after a 7-month investigation involving 26 arrests and $33 million of stolen vehicles, at least 14 people are already out on bail. Wow. The police worked for months to catch these criminals, and days later, a broken system lets them free. When will they finally do the right thing and keep career criminals in jail so that Canadians can keep their cars?
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Start by saluting the impressive work of the Peel Police Force for cracking an organized criminal ring that is taking people's cars. The second thing I want to underscore for that member and her entire caucus is that you can't selectively listen to law enforcement. What law enforcement tells me and the Minister of Public Safety all the time is that the days of teenage joyrides are over. This is an international organized criminal effort. We need to deal with that and follow the money path. How are we doing that? Anti-money laundering offenses, beefing up our strength on money laundering through the fall economic statement and the budget. Two things they are voting against.
The honourable member from Thornhill.
Speaker, it's that minister's policy that is working against the Peel police. And this is coming from a guy that in his ministry had 3 cars stolen in 3 years. The evidence is right on his doorstep. The Liberal catch and release policies are not working. After 9 years of this NDP Liberal Prime Minister, the GTA doesn't stand for Greater Toronto Area. It stands for Grand Theft Auto. 40 cars stolen a day in Toronto, 20 in Peel. How many more is it going to take for him to do something about it?
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
In the last 3 months, we've held an auto theft summit. We've invested $170 million in addressing this issue through investments in law enforcement, through investments in CBSA scanners, through investing in information sharing through Interpol. What we're doing is working diligently to break up criminal networks. We're not pursuing failed policies like the Conservatives' approach year after year under Stephen Harper, most of which were struck down by the Supreme Court of Canada.
The honourable member from Oxford.
Speaker, after 9 years of this Liberal NDP government's soft on crime policies, extortions have more than tripled in Canada. They allow criminals to terrorize our communities and our businesses because when they get arrested, they're let out on bail the same day. The Liberals talk a very big game about fighting crime, but when it matters, they're missing from action. Our common sense Conservative bill would have put these criminals behind bars by strengthening our extortion laws. Why do these Liberals vote against Bill 381 to fight extortion?
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we're listening to people that are affected by extortion. We know this is a pressing problem in parts of BC and in parts of my region in Ontario. What we are underscoring is that extortion is against the law. Extortion with
Going to ask the honourable member from Peace River, Northern Rockies, and I'm forgetting one of the 2 words of it, to please to keep his comments to himself. I'll also ask the honourable member from Cypress Hills Grasslands, please, to keep his comments until he has the floor. I'm going to ask the honourable minister to start again and start from the top.
Mr. Speaker, we are listening constantly to communities that are being affected by extortion, particularly South Asians in the BC region and in the GTA. And what we hear from them is that they need supports. We are providing those supports through aggressive responses under the criminal code. Extortion is against the law. Extortion with a weapon attracts a very significant penalty under Canadian criminal law. What we also understand from them is that organized criminality, including foreign interference and organized criminality, is behind these extortion attempts. That's why bills like C-70 will make an important difference. So will the budget measures on money laundering and cracking down on organized crime.
The honourable member from Foothills.
After 9 years, this NDP Liberal Prime Minister is not worth the homelessness or the hunger. The Carbon Tax Coalition increased the carbon tax 23%, driving grocery prices up $700 per family, and a quarter of Canadians are relying on food banks. They can't afford the basic necessities, let alone a summer vacation. Conservatives have a common sense plan to eliminate all federal gas taxes until Labor Day. This will save Alberta families $955. Will the Prime Minister follow our common sense plan, eliminate the federal gas tax so families can afford a summer holiday?
The Honourable Minister for Families.
Mr. Speaker, I find this question very disingenuous. We will take no lessons from the Conservatives when it comes to food bank usage when they refuse and they vote against providing food to hungry kids at school.
The Honourable Member from Foothills.
Out of touch is a Liberal NDP government that listens to bankers and bondholders that benefit from Liberal inflation. I'm listening to my constituents like Lisa, who showed me her carbon tax rebate. It was $15. What a joke. It's not a joke for Foothills families who pay $3,000 a year in carbon taxes, have nothing left for food or homes, let alone a summer vacation. The Parliamentary Budget Officer is clear. Canadians pay more in the carbon tax than they get back in a rebate. Will the Prime Minister axe all federal gas tax this summer so Lisa could take her family for a summer road trip?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives are the party of austerity.
That's right.
The only thing they know how to do is cut, cut, cut.
Yesterday it was confirmed at committee what Conservatives have been saying all along, that this housing minister will never meet his targets. In St. John, New Brunswick, the lack of housing options are leaving a family in a leaky, moldy apartment, and the father of 4, Corey Hamilton, is worried about the health and safety of his family. 10 new people a week are going homeless in Halifax in the minister's own backyard. When will they stop funding photo ops and start building homes Canadians desperately need?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, even Conservative premiers recognize the damage these cost-cutting austerity Conservatives would wreak on our country. The only thing these Conservatives know how to do is cut, cut, cut.
From Tobic-Matquack.
And all this current federal Liberal government wants to do is blame, 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 and pass the buck. That non-answer will do absolutely nothing for the Hamilton family in St. John who are in desperate need of alternatives for housing. Since the Prime Minister has no plan and the Liberals have no chance tomorrow to build the homes, and all they're wanting to do is continue to build the bureaucracy, why don't they give all of their members a chance to vote freely on this Conservative leader's plan for housing? Let's do that tomorrow, a free vote.
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister. Order. À l'ordre, s'il vous plaît. The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, it is not only Conservative premiers who understand the terrible damage Conservative cuts would do to our country.
Incompetence. The incompetence of this Prime Minister and the Liberal Mayor of Montreal is blocking construction and has led to a tripling of rent prices in Montreal. And we learnt, even worse today in La Presse, that it is a major hindrance in 2019. Obtaining permits, the time taken to obtain a permit has more than doubled. And the Prime Minister continues to spend $95 million for municipalities and mayors that are hindering construction. Why? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the Conservative leader's hypocrisy is clear. Let us talk about their proposal with regards to housing. And the Conservative leader has been ignoring debate on it for months. Their plan will not build enough rapid housing. It doesn't count enough cities and adds red tape. The Conservative leader would be ready to rip up 179 agreements for housing and reimpose GST on the construction of apartments. It's this lack of ambition in housing that have placed us in this situation. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. All the Prime Minister has said is false. When I was the Minister for Housing, we built 200,000 new housing units in Montreal. Average rent was $700 a month. $700 a month, Mr. Speaker. Now it's $2,000 a month. And the time one has to wait for a building permit has more than doubled. Why is the Prime Minister not following my common sense plan by giving money to the municipalities who are actually accelerating housing? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. What we see, Mr. Speaker, is that the Conservative leader is exploiting the fears of Canadians. When the Conservative leader was Minister for Housing, he withdrew from cooperative buildings. No new apartments were built, and initiatives were eviscerated for affordable housing. Today, his proposal for housing is insufficient. The leader of the Conservatives only has slogans and no actual concrete